Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome to week two here, episode two of the Cherry Pickers. I'm Gary Altucher here with Jim Bailey. We are back for week two to talk about all things NFL, injuries, weather, betting lines. We're going to talk a little bit about the NCAA selection committee on the Final Four there and a little bit about that Steelers game. What's up, Bailey? Thanks for joining me.
Yep, doing good. How you doing, sir?
All right, doing pretty good. Well, let's just get started here. Let's start with this NCAA selection committee. They picked the four teams. Obviously we know one team didn't make it, and everybody else thinks they should. Florida State out, Alabama in, and then the other three teams were worthy. I didn't hear anybody complain about the other three teams. It was basically the fact that Alabama got in over Florida State. You're a big college football guy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you heard it all leading up to the selection. Even the few weeks before, they kept stressing the criteria for the committee is selecting the four best teams. They try to say deserving isn't consideration whatsoever. And if that's really the case, it's kind of hard to argue that Florida State's a better team than Alabama. I mean, if you look at point spreads, Florida State's 14-point underdogs in their bowl game against Georgia.
Yeah.
They just you feel bad for them. As a football fan, personally, I was kind of happy it happened because I think Michigan versus Bama is just a much better matchup than Michigan versus Florida State. Good thing is this will all go away next year when the conference champions get an automatic bid, automatic first round bye. I mean, I feel for Florida State fans and the Florida State team. If the criteria is resume and who deserves it, they would have got in. But I'm not too upset with it, really. If the criteria is the four best, I don't think Florida State's one of the four best teams right now with the quarterback injury. If Travis wouldn't have got hurt, they would be in 100%. Or even if they would have, the last two games when they had the backup quarterbacks, if they had been more impressive. A lot of people talk about that OSU year when Cardale Jones came in and they made the playoff with their backup quarterback. The thing is, their conference championship game, they blew Wisconsin out 59-0.
Right.
Florida State barely squeaked by. Every year, someone's going to be upset with this. I'm so glad they're expanding the playoffs. I mean, it's needed to happen for a long time. So, thankfully, next year, Florida State will be in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I mean, I follow college football. I'm not nearly as big of a fan as I am as with the NFL for a million reasons. The rules and things like this, I don't really care for. But I'm not sure why anybody's surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, Bama just beat Georgia, and everybody says a conspiracy about ESPN and money, this and that. But who knows if that's a factor or not? But at the same time, I would, if I'm a big college football fan, I would have been expecting it. I don't know.
Yeah, I was too. Like even leading up to the game, I think if Florida State would have been impressive, if they came out and dominated. But even then, it's like, can you really see them leaving out a one-loss SEC champion that just beat Georgia?
No.
I don't know. They might have, if Florida State would have had Travis, they might have took Texas out. Maybe even with the head-to-head, it was just so hard to see them leaving out the one-loss SEC champ. But in the right criteria, I think they would have. I really do. But how it shook out, I mean, I feel for Florida State, but I think the playoffs are a better matchup. It's going to have more viewers, more fun than seeing Florida State in there over Michigan, in my opinion.
Sorry, I lost connection there for a second, but you're right. I think with the right criteria, they probably would have done the same. But I don't know. It's one of those things where next year it's not going to matter. And I think the committee had that to consider too. Hey, next year we're expanding. So if we do things that make people mad this year, who cares?
Yeah.
That was probably part of it as well. But next year we'll see 12 teams and then hopefully someday 16.
Yeah, so FSU's flipping out about it still. They're threatening to sue. And I saw some rumor already that Florida State's looking to leave the ACC and join the Big Ten or the SEC. I mean, they was already upset about the ACC from what I hear because of the TV contract there is just horrendous compared to what the Big Ten and the SEC get. Yeah. So they was already kind of looking for a way out. Now they go undefeated in the ACC. Like, imagine if like Alabama would have went 13-0 in the SEC, even if they had lost their quarterback and not looked great. Would they have got left out? I mean, there's no way. There's no
No way.
chance. So
No.
we'll see how it plays out.
Okay, well, I just wanted to touch base on that. Let's talk quickly about that Steelers game. A lot of Steelers fans upset this past Thursday. I've seen a lot of people talking about wanting to get rid of Tomlin. DJ Yoakley shared the other day that the Steelers in the last, I don't know how many years, 12 years, have the same amount of postseason wins as the Pirates. When you look at it that way, that is kind of telling. I mean, the guy does win games. He wins games every year, but you lose 2 games in a row to 2-win teams. In my opinion, they won a lot of games they shouldn't have this year. This is kind of things evening out. Now, did I think Arizona was going to go in there and really just come away with a win without much? It wasn't much in doubt there for Arizona in that game. No, I didn't expect that to happen. But New England team's a lot better than their record is. Their defense is a really good defense. In the last 4 weeks, they've given up prior to that Steelers game, they've given up the least amount of points in the NFL. It was just their offense. They couldn't get anything going at all. Bailey Zappi comes in, and he's not new. Everybody seemed to think that he was a new guy that New England had just thrown in there. He played last year. He started a couple games, and the same kind of hype with him, and then he started playing just like everybody else on that roster. But I mean, that game was competitive. I wouldn't have expected anything less. And the fact that the Patriots beat them was not a shock to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, not really. The Arizona loss was a bigger shock. Really, I think the Steelers are closer to what we've seen the last 2 weeks than being like a Super Bowl contender. Like even the games they win, I mean, they just have to struggle. Like they're never just have an easy win. They're just not quite good enough. Tomlin, he's definitely starting to feel the heat. I don't know if he's feeling the heat really, but the media anyway, even some national media, some local media are starting to push like, hey, he needs to take some of the blame for this. Maybe Steelers do need a change. It's hard to say. I mean, he's obviously a good coach. It's not like he's some terrible coach. But the Steelers have had some really talented teams through the years and just haven't really lived up to expectations quite a few times. Not how much you can really blame them. Like for these last 2 games, they're just really not that good a team. I mean, they just got holes. Their inside backers are just decimated with injury. That both the Arizona and New England just killed them going to the tight end over the middle, attacking their backup inside backers. It really didn't surprise me too much that they lost to the Patriots. I mean, the Patriots are a team where a lot of sports bettors have kind of been on them, saying they're not quite as bad as they seem to be. I know the system has liked them a good bit of times, and we kind of decide whether to bet them or not. So, like, even in the betting market, it's not like New England's – I mean, their record is what it is, but they're probably not quite as bad as what that record says.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've been so close to they probably would have covered 5 more times this year. They just could have got a field goal. And their field Belichick is notorious for being a special teams guy, and his field goal kicker has not been playing well this year. There were a couple of games where they would have covered or even won had he made the field goals. Yeah. Things like that have been happening for them. They get into the red zone and they absolutely can't punch it in. So I'm not sure what the answer is for Pittsburgh or even New England. I know that Belichick's on the hot seat as well. So it's just interesting to see 2 great coaches and 2 great franchises come to a point where people are calling for the coaches' heads. You just don't see that very often. And there are a lot of teams in the NFL who say they wish they had the problem that the Steelers and Patriots do, thinking about whether to keep their legendary coaches or not. So yeah. I just want to touch on that. I know I haven't seen that much complaining from Steelers fans in a very long time.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think there's basically 0 chance that Tomlin's fired after this year. I think even if they lose out, they're going to bring him back at least for another year. He just has too long of a track record. They love him. His contract is up next season. So usually once they get to this point where he only has 1 year left in his deal, they sign him to an extension. So they will kind of have to make a decision at the end of this season whether to let him play out his 1 remaining year or sign him to a new extension, maybe just add another year. But yeah, I haven't seen this as far as the media, national, like even the talking heads on ESPN are starting to question him a little bit, which usually they're just all 100% pro Tomlin. So we'll see. But I would be shocked really if the Steelers fired him. I think it might be good for Tomlin himself, though, to get a fresh start somewhere. It's
Right.
just been here so long. It's almost like it's just gotten stale a little bit. I think it could be in the best interest of both to part ways. Maybe that happens, but I just don't see any way the Steelers are firing him this offseason anyway.
And in the Steelers, I'm not sure there's a more loyal organization in the NFL. I mean, Matt Canada gets fired mid-season. That's the first time they've done that since the 1940s, I think, like 80 years or something like that. They haven't fired a coach mid-season. I don't know if that's the right if my timeline's right here. I'm just going off the top of my head, but they don't get rid of guys like that. They don't, and they'll see things out. And I guess how do you get rid of a guy that's never been, under 500? He's all they got to do. They have to win 2 of their next 5 to get to, above 500 unless they somehow tie. But it'd be tough to get rid of him. I don't see him going anywhere. Now, maybe the franchise says, hey, you got to do something about this offense. You've got to bring in somebody young that's got some new ideas. Maybe they kind of push him there. But other than that, I don't see anything happening in Pittsburgh. And with New England, the guy won 6 stinking Super Bowls. He's going to stay there either until they're consistently, 2-15, or he just finally says, I'm out. Other than that, I think he's going to stay as long as he wants.
Yeah, the Steelers definitely need to go outside the organization and bring in an offensive coordinator. They cannot just promote the guys that they got calling the plays now and just roll into next year. They need a shake up. I think it could come to that where the Rooneys say, hey, you have to do this. You need to make these changes on your staff. They just promote from within a lot, which is what's fine in most cases, but with the way the offense is right now, they absolutely have to look outside the organization and bring in a whole new offensive system.
Yep, I agree. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season and the offseason pans out for the Steelers. All right, we're going to go into our system picks right now. Last week, we officially went 3-3 in the all the picks that we suggested here on the show, and we were 2 plays away from being 5-1. That Denver team, there was several things that happened there, including the linebacker getting into a jawing match with C.J. Stroud. They butt heads. Referees let him go. And then the linebacker decides to push him. He does that. That was on a 4th down. It was 4th and 1, and the Texans were called for a false start, which would have made it 4th and 6. And they were down I think they were in the red zone. They were probably going to kick a field goal there. I don't see them going for it on 4th and 6. That personal foul penalty gave them 15 yards, put them inside the 5-yard line. They scored 2 plays later. That's a 4-point swing. The line was 4, and they lost by 5. So we would have covered easily on that. Not only that, Denver drives. They're down inside the 15 or so yard line, and Russell gets some pressure, and he just throws an ill-advised pass that's picked off. That should have been a cover. I don't care. That's just one of those bad beats. And then the other game we really should have covered was that Saints game. Saints go down 21-0 early. Derek Carr throws a pick early. Detroit scores. After the first, 8 minutes of the game, the Saints outplayed the Lions by a bunch. They come back. They get within 3 points, I think. They're driving to take the lead or to tie it up. I can't remember. But what happens? Derek Carr fumbles. Detroit picks it up. They do a little reverse a couple plays later, run into the end zone, and still they only lose by 5. Those are just a couple of bad beats where turnovers come. I mean, a fumble like that. It was a fumble under center, too. It was just something stupid that happened. Both games, a penalty and then a fumble. That Kansas City game, I didn't get to watch that personally, but Green Bay is just we have to take them serious. They're not who they were at the beginning of the season. So we're going to get into this week's picks. Let's start with this Baltimore game. Baltimore's a 7.5-point favorite against the Rams. The system's like this, likes this Baltimore team by 7.5. The Rams playing about 500 football, and they're doing well for their roster. They don't have much on that roster. They got 2 decent receivers, 1 decent running back, obviously a good quarterback, and then 1 good defensive lineman, and that's about it on that team. But right now they're sitting at 6-6. They beat the Browns last week in a game that was a lot closer than the score. But the system has Baltimore as a top 3 team and has had them there all season at that. They like Baltimore minus 7.5. And one thing I will say is this game means a lot more, I would say, in the grand scheme of things for Baltimore. The Rams are just fighting for a spot. Yeah, I don't know how much they even really have a chance, but Baltimore wants to keep pace with Miami here. So I don't see Baltimore taking this lightly. What are you seeing tonight?
Yeah, Baltimore, I think, is a legit, at least top five team. I mean, they've been really good. Andrews injury really hurts them, but their wide receivers are much improved this year. I really like that kid from Boston College, the wide receiver, quick, fits their scheme real good. Beckham, as is often with him, he's been injured a bit here and there, but when he's played, he's been a difference maker for him. Not huge production, but reliable guy. I like what Baltimore's doing with their offense this year. I really like the offensive coordinator hired Todd Monk in the offseason. Last year for the Ohio State Georgia playoff game, I watched a good bit of Georgia film from earlier in the year. Was really impressed with what they do with offense. A lot of motion, pretty complex scheme. If the Steelers were to get rid of Canada, I was hoping that the Steelers would go after Monken. Actually, kind of disappointing that he ended up going to Baltimore. They look good. I mean, I like Baltimore. Thing about this one, there is some weather in the forecast. Looks like a good bit of rain, a little bit of wind. I think it would favor Baltimore. I mean, it does put more variance into the game, which usually favors the underdog. But Baltimore is more of a running team, more used to playing outside. You got the Rams, dome team, West Coast coming for the 1 o'clock game. You always got that factor. So yeah, Baltimore -7. Really like it. Spoiler alert, teased down to -0.5. Pretty much just asking them to win the game, but see
Yeah.
with Rams. I mean, Rams are fighting for a playoff spot. I don't think they're going to come in and roll over. They're going to play hard, but Baltimore, I think, is clearly the better team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when I say this is a bigger game for Baltimore because Baltimore's fighting for the number 1 seed. The Rams are just fighting to stay in, and they're really there by the skin of their teeth at this point. They're just well coached, and Stafford is having a great year. His numbers aren't that great. He's having some bad luck. I mean, we talked about C.J. Stroud and that luck that he's had with turnovers. It happened again last week against Denver. He fumbles the ball. There are 5 Broncos around that stinking ball. He fumbles it, and one
goodness.
Texan gets on top of that. That should have been a turnover. That was another play I forgot to mention that Denver had right in front of them. That Houston team is just all you can say is things are going their way. When you have little things like that and that penalty that gave them a first down on the 6-yard line or whatever, you can't say that that's anything but the bounce of the ball or just that Denver linebacker. If I was that linebacker's coach, I would have been all over him all week about how stupid that penalty was. But for Stafford, he's had the opposite. He's been like Josh Allen this year, where there have been passes that have been intercepted that should not have been intercepted. Ball's bouncing through receivers' hands up in the air, and the defense grabs it. A receiver doesn't run the route all the way, or just something stupid happens that shouldn't happen, and he's turned the ball over. He's playing some of the best football he's ever played if you go and watch a down-by-down basis. But I don't think they have enough today. I don't see this this Baltimore team. They should just be able to dominate this game. They really should. I mean, Aaron Donald's going to do his thing, but I'm sure they're scheming to just stay away from him. And then on defense, they really don't have much else. They don't have a stellar defense at all, and they've got a couple good wide receivers. But if it's raining, I could see Baltimore covering this 7 pretty easy. So we're going to take Baltimore -7. Officially 7 or 7.5, wherever, depending on the book you're at. So that's where we'll start today. Second game here is we're going to go with San Francisco. Officially, we took it earlier in the week at -10.5. It's made a big shift. Was it 13.5 now?
13.5, yep.
Yeah, so there's a 3-point swing there. And we think that was because Geno Smith is questionable for the Seahawks. Smith, obviously the starter there. Their backup, Drew Lock, is not very good. And when any starter goes out, the backup, you're probably going to see a 3-point swing like that. But not only that, they've got 7 or 8 other guys that were questionable. I do know that Charbonnet and Walker are both going to play. Their running backs were both questionable, but they are in. And for the 49ers, their biggest injury this week is Eric Armstead. He's a defensive lineman. He's tough. He's a pretty good defensive lineman there in that rotation. He is out. And so is Spencer Burford. He's a starting lineman for the 49ers, but he's absolutely terrible. So I don't know that the backup's going to be much different for him. But the Seahawks have a lot of other guys that are questionable. 49ers are rolling right now. The weather's going to be perfect at this game. They're trying to continue to win and hope that Philly gets one more loss on the year so that they can kind of cruise into that first place. And again, Seattle is a lot like the Rams right now, just fighting for their playoff lives. I could see the 49ers winning this by, 2 touchdowns easy. Like I said, I took it earlier in the week at 10.5. What are you thinking?
Yeah, saw your buddy Eli Mitchell's highly questionable this week too,
Right.
so we might get to see a whole bit more of Christian McCaffrey slamming into the middle. Hey, we might actually get to see your favorite Jordan Mason. Maybe he'll throw him the ball a little bit.
Yeah, Mason, he's in his second year running back. He's a bruiser. We talked about this last week, how it drives 49ers fans nuts that they refuse to spell McCaffrey. He's got to play every single down. I think that Shanahan is finally hearing some of that and taking some heat because he was getting Elijah Mitchell some carries. That guy's made of glass. He's out again.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Jordan Mason will get some carries today, especially if they're up early. You're getting later in the season. Please stop pounding Christian McCaffrey into the ground. There's no need for it. It doesn't make any sense. He shouldn't be the number one option. He should not be getting 25 touches and targets a game. It's too much, and he's not a big back. What's he weigh, a 210?
Yeah, he's had injury history as well.
So we'll see what happens there. I just think the 49ers are going to be able to overwhelm Seattle. Now, this is a division game, and Pete Carroll's a good coach. And if Smith plays, who knows what happens? They have a good offense. They have good receivers there. They're both of those running backs are tough. I just don't see it happening today, though. I mean, if Seattle covers this 10.5 or this 13.5, it will be because the 49ers are up. And maybe they, you get a backdoor cover here where Seattle comes in, other than flukes, bounces going the wrong way, or somebody gets hurt. I mean, I'm going with the system here, minus 10.5 officially.
Yeah, Pro Football Focus really likes the San Francisco pass rush against Seattle's O-line. You and I have talked how they added Chase Young to an already stout front. I mean, missing Armstead hurts, but Geno playing is the key. I mean, that's definitely the reason for the 3-point move we've seen yesterday. And from what I'm seeing this morning, he's looking pretty unlikely to play. So, I mean, it's hard to envision Drew Lock coming in and having a whole lot of success against San Francisco D.
Yeah, I don't see it. I'm going to go with the Niners here. And that'll be our second pick official. Third one here. We've already talked about this team a couple times here. Denver getting 3 points at the LA Chargers. This is a division game. That Denver team left a couple plays on the field, like we said. We talked about those where they should have at least covered, if not won that game against Houston. They're going to the Chargers. This Chargers team is severely underperforming. Brandon Staley has to be the first head coach fired the day after the last play of the season, or the minute after the last play of the season, on the last day of the season. He's got to be out. There's no way they're going to keep him around. They're crazy if they do. There's too much talent on this team for them to be continually hovering around 500. The offensive line for Denver has a big advantage, according to PFF, here over this front of the Chargers with Bosa out. They've got a bunch of injuries there. I just see Denver, if they're getting 3 points, I'm taking them. I might even do a little side bet and take the money line here on the Broncos.
Yeah, Denver getting threes. Too many points. The Chargers just aren't good enough. You'd think they would be, but when you look at their results, they're just really not that good of a team. They got the talent, but for whatever reason, they just haven't put it together. Last few years, they're just kind of a 500-ish team. They have no home field advantage whatsoever in a game like this. I mean, the crowd will be full of Denver fans. Denver playing good. I mean, if we talk about the close margins, like you said, the little breaks last week, I mean, right off the rip, that was our best bet last week. So I was watching a good bit of it. And right off the rip, very first possession, Wilson throws an absolute dime, 50 yards downfield, right in the guy's fingertips. Would have been a long touchdown, and he just drops it.
They ended up punting.
Punted the next play, and Houston blocks the punt, and all of a sudden they got the ball at the 20 or 30-yard line. And, I mean, that's just how it goes. It's fine margins. Denver's a good team, though. I mean, they're playing solid. They're definitely going to have success running the ball today. Chargers have struggles against the run for sure. I mean, Denver 3 here, I think, is a no-brainer.
Yeah, not only that, you've got, Bosa's out. I think they have one pass rusher other than him who's graded like in the 70s according to PFF, which is a pretty good. That's a pretty good grade overall for especially a defensive lineman. But other than that, they don't have the rush. If Wilson has to make plays with his feet, he can do that as well. They got a couple talented wide receivers. I just think if they can put things together, and I think Sean Payton's a big a coach advantage for them as well. So I really like Denver too here, getting 3 points. I don't know why the public still thinks that the Chargers, they've never been that good. They really ever have been that good with Brandon Staley or Justin Herbert. What their best season, they went 10-7 and they blew like a 24-point lead to the Jags in the playoffs last year. Why do people still think this team is anything but an average to below average team?
Yeah,
what is
it? Good. I mean, they have when you have someone that like Herbert that can move and throw like he does, and they got nice weapons. They're a team that people will get attracted to because they do have a lot of upside. Play where I've seen with them, especially, is like when they're home favorites. I mean, you just can't bet them really. Their home field advantage is nothing. Usually, if they're dogs on the road playing someone decent, because they do have the upside, like they can pull off a win against almost anybody. But as a consistent week to week, they're just a hard team to trust.
Yeah. I would be frustrated if I was a Chargers fan. The few that there are out there in this country, I'd be frustrated. But like you said, away teams seem to always have the advantage there because their fans go and buy up all the tickets because there aren't that many Chargers fans. They're just more like casual fans that go to the game when they don't have much else to do, which is you don't see with very many organizations here in the NFL. So we're going to take Denver +3. These next two games are two biggest games of the week, and we finally got a couple of big games happening on the same week. This NFL season has been really weird. This had not been a very exciting season. There hasn't been that many exciting games. The product on the field has not been that great. But these next two games are going to be some fun games to watch. The first one, we've got Kansas City -1.5 at home versus the Bills. The system likes Kansas City -1.5. It really liked Buffalo to start the season, but after Buffalo suffered 3 injuries to starters on that tough defense, they were really important guys. They haven't been the same since then on the defensive side of the ball. The offensive side of the ball has been a head scratcher. Like we talked about earlier, Josh Allen's had a ton of bad luck with passes that should have not been intercepted that were. And Sean McDermott seems to hinder their offense. He does everything he can to protect that defense rather than just letting his offense fly. I like Kansas City -1.5 today. Kansas City needs it. Both teams need this game, but Kansas City was not expecting to be 7-5 right now. I'll guarantee you that.
Yeah, KC under Reed off a loss is always tough. I mean, Reed's really good coach. They're showing kinks in the armor a little bit these last few weeks. Be interested. I didn't really see like what the public would be on in this matchup. I mean, Buffalo's looked much better recently. Really should have won that Philly game a couple weeks ago. Buffalo's certainly playing for their playoff lives. I mean, they're right on the bubble. It's going to be a fun matchup. Every time these two teams play, it's pretty close and hard fought. I'd imagine today's going to be the same. I'd imagine it's going to be a close, tough game to the end.
Yeah, Casey has a big advantage in the pass blocking department. Their pass block, their guys on their offensive line pass block well, and in the one-on-one matchups with this front from Buffalo, Kansas City's got the advantage here. If you're going to give Mahomes time, he's going to kill you, and it looks like that's what could happen today. I guess if Buffalo continues the path that they have been on lately, these last 4 weeks or so, where the offense has looked a lot better. Yeah, I mean, we could see a close game or even Buffalo coming out winning. Buffalo's due for a big win. They're due for a big win like nobody's business. They're a lot better team than this record is, but they haven't shown it this year. And usually especially this point in the season, the football NFL team is who they are. You don't get any surprises this late in the season unless you're the Giants with Eli Manning and Tom Coughlin completely changes his coaching style with about 6 weeks left in the season. They go on to win the Super Bowl. That's the only time I've ever seen a team completely and totally change this late in the season. I really think that this Kansas City offense does have a chink in the armor, and that's the second half. I don't know what is about the second half offense with this team, but they don't seem like they can put points on the board for some reason. But like you said, with them coming off of a loss, Reed is such a smart coach. He's an X's and O's whiz. And Mahomes, he's not playing like Patrick Mahomes, but in a vacuum, one game, all the spotlight on you. I like them today.
Yeah, I mean, they've had some tough losses too. Even the Packers game last week had a long pass there at the end of the game. Wide receiver got mugged, no penalty. Pretty much the same thing the week before when they played Philly. Long pass at the end of the game, and it was just off the receiver's hands. They could have easily won both those games. So, of course, Kansas City is still good. I think they are struggling. Kelsey's just getting a little bit older. You can tell he's just lost a step. He's still great, but he just isn't quite what he was. And then they're still just searching for consistency for a number two guy in the offense. And we talked about him last week. The kid Rice looks pretty good, but their offense is just struggling a bit. Got you muted.
The Isaiah Pacheco is out right now.
Not looking good for him.
No, Dawson Knox is back. That according to some analysts, that's a bad thing because McDermott seems to go to two tight ends when he's in the game, which means they don't get to sling the ball as much. They don't get to three wide receivers on the field. I mean, Josh Allen's best and worst attribute is that he's a gunslinger and he'll take chances, but when it works out great. But if he doesn't have the guys downfield to throw the ball to, he's forcing things or he's taking off running. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this game. But we're officially taking Kansas City -1.5 here in this big AFC matchup. All right, the next game and the final one on our official picks here is Dallas -3 at home versus this Eagles team coming off really what you consider an embarrassing loss to the 49ers. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, it was wild. It started off all Philly, like San Fran was struggling right off the rip. Starting to doubt the pick, like, oh man, this is not looking good. Philly's fired up to play, and then it seemed like once San Francisco broke the dam and got the first score, it was all San Fran through the game. I mean, Philly has to be embarrassed about it. I mean, it was just a straight whooping in the second half. Philly had no chance to stop them. Prime, vintage, Shanahan mixing up the play calls. San Francisco's weapons are just ridiculous. Deebo Samuel is the best open field runner as a wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe Tyreek, but him with the ball in his hands, he just breaks tackles like he's a tailback. That's why they put him at tailback. He's really good. Philly has to be embarrassed, but Philly couldn't have been any more up for the game than they were last week. So it's not like they're going to be more fired up here. Be interesting to see if Dallas can pull this off. I mean, they have beaten Philly at home the last few years, but Dallas in these spots where they really have to step up the competition in a big game, they just have performed poorly the last few seasons. Huge game for them. I mean, the division is still there for them if they can pull this off. Gonna be a fun one to watch, definitely.
Yeah, and Philly's played big game after big game after big game here the last 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, Buffalo, San Francisco,
AC.
Kansas City. It's got to start to wear on you. And they're at Dallas, where that place is going to be rocking. You'll be lucky if you see one Philly fan in that whole stadium. Dak Prescott's playing at MVP level. I mean, it's got to be him and Brock Purdy right now. I mean, that's got to be the two guys. I mean, he's playing lights out. I think he leads the NFL in passing touchdowns, and he's either first or second in the top few anyway in completion percentage. They've got weapons all over the place. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's playing great. Their running game is pretty good. Their running game is not as good as it has been in the past, but I think the pass game has made up for that. And their defense, they still create turnovers like crazy. I mean, last year they were doing it, and everybody's saying, "Oh, it's a fluke." What's his name? I can't remember his name right now. He kept getting interception after interception after interception, but then he would give up a big play. And now you're seeing interceptions turning into pick sixes, and they lead the NFL in defense, special teams points. In other words, pick sixes, fumble sixes, or block kicks that are returned for touchdowns. They've got like 6 of them this year or something, maybe even 7. They're doing a great job there. I just think I'm going to go with the system here. I'm going to go with Dallas -3 and take them at home. I think this is just too big of a game for them. Now, is Philly capable to come in and win by 10? Yes, absolutely they are. But I just think the atmosphere of the game, and you'll see it in the line, the fact that in some books, Dallas is favored by 3.5 will just tell you where the public is right now on Philly after that 49ers game, after that win that shouldn't have been a win against Buffalo, and with Dallas playing so high. There's got to be a lot of sharp money on Dallas, at least to start this game.
Yeah. I mean, the market is kind of spoken on Philly the last couple of weeks with this San Francisco and the Dallas line. If this was last year, these lines wouldn't have been that way. They just haven't been playing as good, especially defensively. I mean, some of their defensive rankings are way down the list.
Yeah,
a lot worse than you would think they would be. Pro Football Focus has Dak, the best quarterback in the league so far this year. I mean, he's playing at a really high level. Talked about it last week. Dallas's home road splits are huge for their offense. I mean, the last few years when they're at home and they're averaging 7 or 8 points more a game than they do when they're on the road.
right.
So they should be comfortable. Huge game for sure. I saw Philly's getting Dallas Goedert back, which might help their offense a little bit, but I don't think their offense is really so much the problem. It's the defense, and I can see Dallas having a lot of success today.
Yeah, I mean, that Philly defensive front is tough. That's going to be something that, Dallas offensive line is going to have to show up today. But their secondary is not playing that great this year. They're giving up a lot of the pass. And you seen Brock Purdy pick them apart last week. I mean, he just was throwing two wide open guy and another. And like you said, Debo was all over the place. Dallas doesn't have any kind of playmakers like that, but they do got solid guys everywhere. So I'm excited to watch this game. I'm hoping, of course, as a 49ers fan, that Dallas comes through, because then we'll have the tiebreaker over both of those teams and just have to cruise on through the rest of the season. We do play Baltimore here on Christmas Eve, but it'll be fun to watch this. I'm definitely going to go with the system here with the Dallas officially -3. And that concludes all the system picks that we've got, but we're going to talk about some of these other games here. Let's start with this Browns game. The Jags are getting 1.5 at Cleveland. It was announced that old man Flacco is starting for them. They released P.J. Walker. I know he was a thorn in the side of every Browns fan. Those few games that he started, he just did not produce, and they lost some games that they saw. The Browns fans thought they should have won. But it looks like Trevor Lawrence is going to play after that high ankle sprain. I think they're really forcing him back too soon. And you can see that even though the news is that he's most likely going to play, I don't know if you've got an update, if you saw anything, if they've said for sure or not, because they have to, 90 minutes before the game, they have to release the info.
Yeah, it should be coming out any minute now. I mean, and that's, of course, the huge key to the game of how to break it down is whether he's going to play or not. So I have not seen any news. It definitely should be coming out any minute now. I'll refresh my app here. But if not, we get your old buddy C.J. Beathard, old that 49er that you love so much.
Well, yeah, he played for the 49ers for a few years, and all the advanced metrics talk about how great C.J. Beathard was for the 49ers, but they don't realize that Kyle Shanahan designed and schemed up things for him, and really he blew games in the worst ways so many times. It was one of those things where you knew, as a 49ers fan, you knew what was coming. Yeah, playing good, but he's going to screw it up here somehow. And that's usually what ended up happening. If he plays, it's a totally different game. But with Trevor Lawrence in there and Etienne, he's back too. He's healthy, I guess. There were some questions of whether he's going to play or not. I don't know. This will be a tough game to pick, because obviously that Cleveland defense is tough, but they haven't been playing that way lately. These last few games haven't been the same Cleveland defense that we saw early in the season. And I don't know. I'm not taking an official pick on this. This will be interesting. I don't know how Lawrence plays well. I really don't.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like he's in. I just refreshed the app. He's active. So if he's active, he's surely going to be starting. It is. How good can he play? That injury, what was it, Monday night? They played on Monday as well. Looked bad. I mean, he went down, could barely walk. Nothing broken, but it looked like a pretty severe sprain. His mobility has to be pretty limited in a game like this. I'd imagine they'll go a little more run heavy, which would probably play into Baltimore or Cleveland's hands. Cleveland's got still got a lot of injuries on defense. I mean, that's been part of why they've slipped up a bit. I wonder if the line has moved now that Lawrence is officially active. We saw a lot of line movement. I mean, before last week, Jacksonville would have been favored with Flacco starting for sure. But then once the Lawrence injury happened, it was Cleveland -3. And then as news kind of trickled out through the week, the line went down. And as of this morning, Cleveland was favored by 1.5. I would imagine that Lawrence is active. It might tick up a bit. I doubt it would go up too much, but yeah, that'll be the key is how well he can really play, how well he can move around with. Surely it's still going to be a bum ankle.
Yeah, it looks like he is playing. I just checked Vegas Insider, and it's still showing the Browns -1.5 at pretty much every book. So I don't know if they just haven't adjusted them yet or not, but if he's playing and he's healthy, then that's a different story. But the way he came out of that game, that was a big game last week, losing to that Bengals team. We'll talk about them in a second here. That was a huge loss for them. They need this desperately. They want to keep pace where they're at. And obviously this is the same for Cleveland. Flacco looked pretty good for most of the game, but as Joe Flacco does, when it counted and they needed a big pass, he seems to just kind of heave something up in the air. And it came down as an interception. That was a 1-point game at the time because of a missed extra point. And he throws that pick deep. And then from there, the wheels fell off of that in that game with the Rams. And the Rams came, but the score did not indicate how close it was. He still got a big arm. And I'm shocked, but I'll give him credit. It looks like he's kept himself in shape. If he can just hold up back there, make the plays that he needs to make, and their defense can play well, they could easily come away with this game with a win.
Yeah, he played well last week. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect. I thought about betting Cleveland in that game. Glad I didn't ultimately, but really Cleveland was probably the correct side there. It was a real close game up until the last 5 minutes. The score was way worse than what the results actually were. He played good. I mean, he still has plenty of arm. Of course, arm talent was never a problem with him. Some Browns or fans are still saying maybe we should go back to the rookie Thompson Robinson, give him Flacco another start this week. We'll see how it goes. Browns are one of those teams. They don't need to have elite quarterback play to be able to have a lot of success. So we'll see. I don't know. It's a big question mark in this game on both sides to see how these offenses are going to do.
Yeah, Cleveland. Some of the weeks this season, we've talked about this. They looked like the best team in the NFL some of those weeks because their defense just was so suffocating to everyone. But they're not as healthy as they were earlier in the season. So it'll be interesting to see how they do today. If Lawrence plays well, I'll be shocked. I really will. They're going to probably have that ankle taped up. He's probably going to barely be able to bend that thing. He's not going to be running around back there. They're going to have to call a lot of screens and slants and quick outs, stuff like that, just to get the ball out of his hand. Of all the teams to play your number one, your franchise player who's hobbled, I don't think this is the team to do it with. So we'll see what happens here. It'll be interesting to see how it goes, and whoever wins this game, taking a big step to the playoffs here. All right, let's move on to this Houston team we've talked about a bunch. They're at the Jets, and the Jets tried to experiment with a couple of different quarterbacks, and nothing worked out. So they're going back to Old Faithful there in New York. They're going back to Josh Wilson, and I don't know. What do you see this game? What do you see happening here?
And Jets are just so ugly to watch. I mean, that Rodgers injury just sunk their season so much. It's unfortunate, too, because the prime networks put them in prime slots so much because they were expecting Rodgers. And they had like a real good schedule this year. I was so excited to watch him play. And now every week they're in prime slots. Thankfully, not this week, but have gotten to see a bunch of them. And they're just – I mean, the offense is just ugly. It doesn't really matter which quarterback they put in there. I like the kid Wilson, wide receiver from OSU. He looks good. Brees Hall looks good. I saw he was kind of questionable this week too. Houston, a little bit different. They're going to have to go on the road to the Northeast. They're still going to put up some points, I would imagine. I mean, their offense has been humming pretty much. They weren't outstanding last week, but you'd think they would be able to put up enough points to overcome this Jets team.
Yeah, like we said, the Texans have really benefited from lucky bounces here as far as turnovers go. They are playing well. This Jets defense is tough, but you have to wonder at this point in the season where they played tough so many weeks. We're in week 14. They had a bye, so 12 weeks of the year. Let's say they played really great 9 or 10 of those weeks. They only have 4 wins. It's got to weigh on your mind if you're a defensive player. You're there, you're busting your butt every week, you're playing well, but then the offense comes out and it just looks so terrible. I mean, I don't know how much worse that offense could look. If Rodgers was healthy, the offense wouldn't be – I don't think the offense is good enough to be anything amazing. They'd probably have a reverse record. They'd probably be 8-4 instead of 4-8 with the way the defense is played. You have to think that that's weighing on them. So how much motivation do they have compared to the Texans? I don't know. But you did check out some weather, right?
Yeah, definitely some weather in that game. Looks like some rain, some wind, enough where it could factor into the results. Would think that would favor the dog, the more defensive team, Jets. So might want to check an updated weather. It was early this morning when I saw it. It's always hard to say exactly how much it's really going to affect the game, but there is going to be some weather involved. So if you're looking to take Houston, might want to take that into consideration.
Yeah, definitely. Rain, I think you, as a Steelers fan, I can remember that Dolphins game, Pittsburgh, Miami. Yeah. What was the final? Was 3-0 on a field goal at the end of the game. The ugliest football you'll ever see in your life.
They had just resodded Heinz Field as well, so it was like brand new turf, and it just didn't hold whatsoever, and it was just a monsoon. That was that one where they punted and the ball came straight down and just stuck dead in the field on the end of the ball. That was horrific. Yeah, it was 3-0. Steelers got a field goal like the last play of the game to win 3-0. Just an absolute slog. So always a good idea if you're betting these games, check the weather. It can be a big difference maker sometimes. This game, it's hard to say. It's not going to be a huge factor. It's not like it's going to be a total Pittsburgh-Miami type game.
No.
It could come into play.
All right, let's move on to the Raiders here. They got a home game against Minnesota, and they're getting 3 points. It's Vegas +3 against Minnesota. This Vikings team seems to be a public team. They like this team. They like Kirk Cousins. After that Netflix special, everybody got on the Kirk Cousins train. Then he got hurt, and then an even bigger storyline comes in with Josh Dobbs, who starts the season in Arizona, plays 8 games there, plays admirably. And then as soon as Kyler Murray's healthy, they trade the guy. You have to feel for him. He's bounced around the NFL. He gets thrown into these starting positions with no time to prepare, with no chemistry. He said his first game that he played with the Vikings, he didn't even know his teammates' names because he had been thrown in there so quick, and they ended up winning the game. He does some heroics, but his play has cooled way down the last couple of weeks, and he was getting away with some iffy throws that ended up working out for him that, 9 times out of 10 might not, and with his legs. This Raiders team's playing inspired ball. Getting 3 at home seems like a lot right now. I don't know about you, because Raiders haven't played bad since they got rid of Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, I was surprised at this line myself. Minnesota's probably not that good to be able to lay 3 on the road against most anybody. I mean, they could lose any week. They got some good players, but with Dobbs at quarterback, I don't think they should be laying 3 on the road. But the Raiders do have some injuries. Like Crosby is highly questionable, which would be just a massive loss for him. I mean, he's the engine of their defense. Every time you watch him play, he just jumps off the screen. He's all over the place. And their left tackle, Colton Miller, looks like he's pretty questionable as well. So that could factor into the line we're seeing.
Is Jefferson playing today?
I think so. That's what I was going to ask you. I think he's due back this week. I don't know. I didn't look at this game too much. I'm not going to be betting on this one, but I think he is supposed to be back this week.
Yeah, I mean, if he's back, he makes a big difference for them. They're definitely a different offense with him. Definitely one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, if not really some consider the best wide receiver in the NFL. And he has the numbers sometimes to back that up. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this game goes. I just think that Vegas getting points here was a little bit, I don't know. It kind of jumped off to me, but missing Crosby and their left tackle, who knows what's going to happen? They have played better. It'll be I'm sure this will be a close game. But I'm not making an official pick. I'm not laying any money on this game personally.
Same. I mean, Vegas is tough to trust with their inexperienced quarterback. If I had to bet it, I would take Vegas for sure. I'm with you. I think it'll be a close game either way, but Vegas tough to trust, especially if Crosby doesn't play. I mean, he's just a massive force on their defense. If he doesn't play, which it looks like he's legitimately questionable, he's worth a couple points in the point spread, at least 1.5 or so, I'd say.
It looks like he is playing. Yeah, Crosby's playing, Jefferson's playing, but Colton Miller is out. So you're missing one of your starting linemen. But Crosby playing, that's big for them. Jefferson playing, that's big. So this will probably be a fun game to watch. Let's move on to this Cincinnati team. Cincinnati laying 3 points against this Colts team that's a playoff team right now. Everybody watched that Bengals team beat the Jags last week with Jake Browning at quarterback. The guy played lights out. I mean, maybe I'm just biased here, but he looked a lot like Brock Purdy last week, if you ask me. He doesn't have a big arm, but man, did he make some really nice decisions and just found guys who were wide open. And if he could play like that, they could beat just about anybody on their schedule left here. Do you think that was a fluke or what? I bet the public was 90% on Jacksonville last week. I didn't look at the splits. I should have. But I can bet you Vegas made out like crazy last week with everybody wanting to see that Jags team blow out this Bengals team that's been hurt all year with a backup quarterback.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, he played the game before against Pittsburgh and looked like a normal backup. I mean, he wasn't bad, but he didn't look anywhere like he did that Monday night game. And you could see it early on. They went for a 4th down just across midfield early. Usually when you have a backup quarterback like that, you see the coaches go ultra conservative, have a chance to punt. You could see it right off the rip that they were comfortable rolling him out there, throwing the ball, going for it on 4th down. So I kind of had a feeling pretty early in the game that this is going to be a battle. I was actually in a survivor pool with 4 entries left last week. One of them had Pittsburgh lost, and then me and 2 other people had Jacksonville, all 3 of us, and we lost, of course. So, but the pool, I mean, no one's seen Cincinnati playing like that. I don't think it was too much of a fluke. I mean, to play that well, yeah, but I mean, he was like 32 or 37. Like, you at least have to have some talent and some comfort in the offense to be able to play that good against a good defense in Jacksonville. I liked Cincinnati today. They started out as 1-point dogs. The line has shifted to them being 2.5 point favorites. So there's definitely money coming in on Cincy, which I agree with. They got plenty of talent. If they can just get something out of the quarterback spot there, they're still a dangerous team.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely got the talent. Joe Mixon is playing great this year, quietly playing great. I mean, I don't know about his official stats overall, but he coming up big when they needed him. And he really played tough last week. Of course, they've got the receivers out there. If Browning can play like he did last week, they're probably going to get, make a run here at the playoffs. I'll be watching this game for sure because the NFL is dying for some storylines. It's just been such a boring year. So maybe Jake Browning will be the next guy that everybody's following here to see what happens. It does look like that line has moved to 3 now. So, yeah, it's now Bengals -3. So we'll see what happens. Let's move on here to Packers are 6.5 point favorites at the Giants after the Packers beat Kansas City on a primetime game. I think everybody now knows how good this team is, but I did see Christian Watson's out for these guys. The Giants have played ugly football all year long. They're now down to Danny DeVito's nephew playing quarterback. But the Giants seem to, when you at least expect they'll come through with a win. They beat Buffalo earlier in the season. I don't know if Green Bay's playing like they have been, they should win this game comfortably, but playing at New York is not going to be easy. And with Watson out, that does change things. He's been playing great lately.
Yeah. Big, huge win for the Pack last week at home. I know a lot of people were high on Jordan Love coming into the season, thought he would kind of surprise some people. Started off slow, but last few weeks he's starting to look really good. Has a rapport there with Watson. Him being out is a huge loss. What was the line on this one? What's it?
Six and a half right now. Green Bay 6.5-point favorites.
Yeah, that's a lot of points to lay on the road. Even a team as bad as the Giants. I haven't got to see too much of the Giants. I mean, what can you really expect out of them with Tommy DeVito and really no receivers to speak of whatsoever? I mean, they got Barkley. Defense is decent, but I don't think I could lay a touchdown.
No way. No, I'm not putting money on this game, but if I did, I probably would take Green Bay just because of how well they've been playing. And with, like you said, there's no playmakers for that Giants team. The fact that they won, what did they win? 11 games last year, 12 games.
Yeah, they had an outrageous season for their talent level.
I mean, Brian Daboll coached his butt off. They had a lot of breaks that went their way. They went into Green Bay and won last year early in the season, and everybody thought that was going to be a Green Bay blowout. They played well, and then they go into Minnesota and win a playoff game. I think expectations were tempered this year because of how they won a lot of close games, but I didn't see them being this bad. I didn't see them playing as poorly as they are. They've got a decision to make a quarterback too here coming up in the offseason because I think they can get out of either Jones. If his contract's not up, they can get out of it this year with minimal damage long term. Who knows what's going to happen? If I'm in that front office, I just want us to lose the rest of the games so we can get a high draft pick and kind of start over next year.
Yeah, I mean, they just signed just the extension. You're right; they could still get out of it. Hard to say. I mean, this quarterback class is amazing. This is one of the best quarterback classes in recent memory. Next year's quarterback class is supposed to be opposite, not very good. So see a lot of these teams that are kind of fringe, not sure what to do with quarterback situation. Go for one of these top guys next year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, last game we're going to talk about today is the Dolphins are 14-point favorites taking on the Titans, and I just checked. The Titans have a bunch of injuries. People like the Dolphins because they're so explosive, and they get these huge lines against these bad teams, and they seem to cover every single week against them. Mike McDaniel, great offensive-minded coach. Now, they haven't beat – I don't even know who their best win is this year. They've got to have one of the weakest schedules in the NFL. But Tennessee's got a bunch of guys out. I think they got a couple linemen – or, I'm sorry, a couple of starting defensive guys out. So who knows what this game could be. If I'm taking this game, I'm teasing this down, and I would think a 7-point tease on Miami would be a home run. Are you thinking about this game?
Yeah, I mean, throwing Miami money line into some of your parlays as a free square might make some sense. It's just always scary laying that many points against anybody in the NFL.
Yeah.
But you're right. They have most of the time. They are covering it last week. I mean, they just blew Washington out of the water early. They just have so much explosion on offense. Tyreek Hill is just playing like MVP level. He's huge to their offense. Still can't believe somehow he got out of KC. They could really use a guy. So Tennessee, not really sure what to make of them. Levis looks pretty good at times. He definitely has some physical tools. They still do the pound Derrick Henry and throw the ball to DeAndre Hopkins. It's hard to see Tennessee really having a legit chance to winning outright, though. I mean, I think throwing Miami in a parlay might make some sense, but you're not going to get much return on them. I mean, they're huge favorites.
Nope, I think you're right. All right, we're getting ready to end the show here. We got two things left to cover. First off, we ended last week with Bailey's best bet. It was Denver. They were not able to cover for all of the stupid reasons that we told you about earlier. So you've got a chance here to redeem yourself, Bailey. Who are you going with this week?
The Denver Broncos. Going right back to the well. They played good enough to win last week. I mean, we've already covered kind of what went on. They had the ball first and goal with plenty of time left to try to win last week. Threw the ball into the end zone a few times, just couldn't get it. You and I were texting on the edge of our seats, thought they were going to pull it out, but no such luck as life in the NFL and life as a sports bettor goes. Can't be scared to go right back to them. Looking through the bets this week, I think that's the best bet on the board. I think getting 3 against the Chargers feels like a toss-up game at best. Maybe Denver should be favored realistically, Chargers are just overvalued game after game, even year after year. These last few years, they just look like they should be so much better than they are, but the results they're what they are. Getting 3 points here in a close game with Denver, it's going to be our best bet of the week.
All right. So Denver +3. Do you have a tease for us?
We will have a tease. We're going to go with Baltimore. They're -7, so you're teasing them 6 points down to -1. And then another game that we talked about, Cincinnati. So
Okay.
before the broadcast, it was 2.5. I haven't checked the lines if you said it's 3, but the plan was to go through the 0 up to 3.5 Cincinnati. Usually in teasers, they always tell you not to tease through the 3, but in a game like this, which I think is going to be pretty close, I don't see Cincinnati getting blown away. Indy's not the type of team that's going to blow anybody out. Cincinnati, I really was impressed by that QB. I think it's more that he's good than it was a total fluke. It's probably somewhere in the middle, but I think he at least has a pretty good grasp on the offense, distributed the ball to his ample weapons. They ran the ball well. So teasing that up to 3.5, whatever your book's at right now would be the other leg along with Baltimore.
All right. Denver +3, and then teasing Baltimore to -1 and Cincinnati to 3.5. That'll do it, folks, for episode 2 of the Cherry Pickers. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Good luck this week. Remember, don't bet more money than you can afford to lose. And if you need help, 1-800-GAMBLER is there for you to provide resources for you and anything that you need with gambling. For Jim Bailey, I'm Gary Altizer. Thanks for tuning in to YSN. We'll see you next time.